If you want to know what came before Greece, before Rome, before even the Bible, or if you've ever wondered how writing was invented, or what the world's first cities looked like, or if you've ever been curious about ziggurats, flood myths, or the kings who claimed to rule by divine right thousands of years before Caesar or Charlemagne, if so, then today's course just might be for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the Great Courses series, Between the Rivers, the History of Ancient Mesopotamia by Alexis Q Castor. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're heading back to where history began, ancient Mesopotamia. It's a land of firsts, the first cities, the first laws, the first known writing system, which is what distinguishes history from prehistory. So that is why I say that this is where history began, and the first empires. And yet for many of us, there is still so much to learn. I've been working on a second channel called History Unraveled with Dr. Duncan, where I offer long-form videos and quick explainers that explore major historical topics, especially for those studying world history at a college level or just out of deep curiosity. To prepare for that project, I've been watching a lot of Great Courses lectures. They're structured like books. They are complete with key arguments and organized narratives, so I review them here the same way I do with all of my nonfiction works. And if this sounds interesting to you, please check out my Great Courses playlist. The course I'm reviewing today, Between the Rivers, the History of Ancient Mesopotamia, is taught by Alexis Q Castor. It's a fascinating deep dive into the cultures that rose between the Tigris and Euphrates, from the first settlements in the Neolithic all the way to the fall of Babylon. If you've ever wanted a clearer understanding of what came before all the classics, this course is a great introduction for you. But first, let me give you a quick bio about the presenter. Dr. Alexis Q Castor is a social historian of the ancient Mediterranean with a scholarly focus on how everyday objects, particularly jewelry and adornment, helped ancient people express their social identities. Her research emphasizes how wearable items were more than decoration. They were deeply embedded in the cultural, gendered, and class-based practices of daily life. By studying how both men and women across different social strata used adornment, Castor opens a window into the lived experiences of people often overlooked in traditional histories. She brings the same attention to ordinary lives and cultural nuance into the classroom. At the college level, she teaches ancient history courses on Greece and Rome, as well as thematic classes on topics like race and ethnicity in the classical world, the structure of ancient families, and the legal systems of antiquity. Across her courses, from introductory surveys to advanced seminars, she blends textual and archaeological evidence and encourages students to ask complex questions about the past, like who gets left out of the historical record, or what do new discoveries reveal, and how can we better understand ancient peoples on their own terms rather than simply projecting our own values onto them. So while her academic specialization centers on the Mediterranean world, particularly the Greeks and the Etruscans, she brings the same human-focused material cultural approach to other stuff. For example, this Great Courses series on ancient Mesopotamia. Now here is an overview of the entire course. Between the Rivers. It is an insightful, methodical exploration of one of the world's first and most influential civilizations, stretching from the dawn of settlement in the Fertile Crescent to the fall of Babylon. As I said, it is taught by Dr. Alexis Q Castor, and the course invites viewers to consider not just the famous kings and the empires, but also the farmers and scribes and artisans and families who lived between the Tigris and Euphrates. That, of course, is all part of her specialty. The course opens with geography and environment, and grounding viewers in the importance of the rivers and the ecology that made urban life possible. From there, it moves chronologically through the emergence of cities, the invention of writing, the establishment of state power, and the growth of empires, beginning with Sumer and Akkad, through Babylon and Assyria, and ending with the Persian conquest. What makes this course stand out is Castor's balance of big picture narratives and micro-historical details. She discusses political structures and military campaigns, but she also pauses to examine religious rituals, economic systems, burial practices, and the social roles of women and children. Material culture plays a central role, so stuff like tablets and ziggurats, statues, and everyday objects are analyzed not just as artifacts, but as clues to how people in ancient Mesopotamia understood their world. Throughout, Castor encourages viewers to reflect on how we know what we know, the role of archaeology, the fragmentary nature of the sources, and the biases of both ancient records and modern interpretations. The result is a grounded yet imaginative course that traces the roots of urban civilization while honoring the complexity and humanity of the people who lived it. So here is my lecture by lecture summary, and by lecture I mean I will read the name of the lecture and give you a one-sentence summary. I'm sorry, but there are 36 lectures in this course, and so I could not give you a very detailed summary of each of the courses or each of the lectures, but they are so interesting and it's just a lot to cover, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of what exactly you would find if you picked up this lecture series. Lecture 1, she begins in the Iraq Museum. It's an introduction to Mesopotamian history through the lens of the Iraq Museum, highlighting its artifacts and the fragility of cultural heritage in times of war. Lecture 2, Geography and Environment, explores the physical landscape of Mesopotamia and how the Tigris and Euphrates shaped patterns of settlement and agriculture and survival. Lecture 3, Discovering Mesopotamia. In this, she charts the modern rediscovery of ancient Mesopotamian civilizations through European exploration and excavation and scholarly fascination. Lecture 4, Archaeological Methods. She explains how archaeologists study ancient Mesopotamia through layers of material culture, site stratigraphy, and evolving excavation practices. Lecture 5, Farming and Early Settlement. So after 4 lectures of looking at how we explore the past, it is lecture 5 where we actually discuss what we know about the past. And in lecture 5, it examines how the transition from foraging to farming led to permanent settlements. We have settlements like Jericho and Çatalhöyük that are key for setting the stage for urban life. So they predate our earliest cities, but they are definitely moving towards that direction. Lecture 6, the Uruk phenomenon. This details the explosive urbanization of the Uruk period, including monumental architecture, as well as administrative innovations and the first writing system. Lecture 7, Writing. This one, of course, introduces the invention and evolution of cuneiform as a revolutionary tool for communication, record keeping, and state control. Lecture 8, Temples, analyzes the religious and political significance of temple complexes as central institutions in early Mesopotamian city-states. Lecture 9, Mesopotamian deities. This one presents the complex pantheon of gods and goddesses, and it explores how religion structured everything from governance to gender roles. Lecture 10, Gilgamesh, Hero and King. This one unpacks the Epic of Gilgamesh as a reflection of early kingship, as well as questions on mortality, friendship, and human limitations. Lecture 11, the Early Dynastic Period, helps survey the rise of competing Sumerian city-states, including advances in administration, warfare, and kingship models, and what it brought next. Lecture 12, Warfare and Diplomacy, considers how early city-states interacted through conflict and negotiation, foreshadowing the diplomacy of later empires. Then that brings us to part 2, the Great City-States. Lecture 13, the Royal Cemetery of Ur, explores the opulent burials of Ur, including Queen Puabi's tomb, and what they reveal about class, ritual, and death in early Mesopotamia. Lecture 14, the Akkadians, introduces Sargon of Akkad and the world's first empire, and analyzes how Akkadians' rule reshaped language as well as power and identity. Lecture 15, Ideology of Kingship, Naram Sin and Gudea. This one compares 2 rulers who elevated the idea of divine kingship and legacy through propaganda and monuments and major reforms. Lecture 16, the Ur Third Dynasty, covers the political, economic, and administrative achievements of Ur's Third Dynasty, hence the name, especially as it pertained to bureaucracy and monumental order and all sorts of reforms that were giving more and more ideas about how to run a growing empire. Lecture 17, Life in a Mesopotamian City. It reconstructs daily life in Mesopotamian cities using textual and archaeological evidence from homes and families to trades and schools. This is, of course, one of those lectures where we see a departure from an exploration of big men and big ideas and big questions about theology and all of that. And we're just taking a look at everyday life. And lecture 18, similarly, is Food and Drink, and it details the cultivation and preparation and cultural importance of food and drink, including bread, beer, and their big banquet customs. And then we take a turn. In lecture 19, she addresses Assyrian trade networks and focuses on how long-distance trade and the movement of goods, as well as ideas and people through networks connecting Anatolia to Mesopotamia, dramatically affected the way Mesopotamia looked and interacted. Lecture 20, Hammurabi of Babylon. This one profiles the legendary king and his enduring legacy, especially through the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest legal collections, at least something that has been written down and is so big and grand that we still have pieces of it to this day. Lecture 21, Zimri-Lim of Mari. This one uses the archive of this relatively lesser known ruler to explore palace life, as well as administration and Mesopotamian political intrigue. Lecture 22, Laws. This one broadens the legal conversation beyond Hammurabi to examine how law codes functioned in practice across Mesopotamian societies, and not just what was written down in a law code that can be misleading. Lecture 23, Medicine, Science, and Math. This one explores Mesopotamian contributions to early science, from diagnostic medicine and surgery to astronomy and mathematical notation. It is so fascinating. They're all fascinating, but this one I don't know why I particularly connected with. Lecture 24, Poetry and Literature. This one celebrates the rich literary tradition beyond just the Epic of Gilgamesh, and so it includes hymns and myths and wisdom texts and lullabies written in cuneiform. Also an absolutely fascinating read. Part 3, Empires of the East. Lecture 25, Internationalism, looks at the late Bronze Age international system where Mesopotamia interacted with Egypt, the Hittites, and the Aegean world. Lecture 26, Assyrian expansion. This one traces the military and administrative growth of the Assyrian Empire and its development of brutal efficiency and imperial control. Lecture 27, Sargon II, examines the life and reign of one of Assyria's greatest kings, including his ambitious building projects and diplomatic ambitions. Lecture 28, Ideology of Empire, explores how empires justified expansion and rule through divine sanction, as well as artistic propaganda and ritual performances. Lecture 29, Control and Revolt, considers the challenges of governing a vast empire and the frequent revolts that shaped Assyrian and Babylonian imperial strategies. Lecture 30, The Medes and the Neo-Babylonian State. This one, of course, introduces the Medes, and it explores the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, including the famous Nebuchadnezzar II and his rebuilding of Babylon. Lecture 31, The Rise of the Achaemenids. This one covers the Persian conquest of Mesopotamia and how the Achaemenids inherited and adapted earlier traditions of kingship and empire. Lecture 32, Persians in Egypt and Greece. This one looks at Persian expansion beyond Mesopotamia, including their occupation of Egypt and conflicts with the Greek city-states, the very famous conflicts with the Greek city-states, and in many ways the beginning, at least in many textbooks, of Western civilization. Lecture 33, Xerxes' invasion of Greece. This one details the famous campaign of Xerxes and the larger context of the Persian-Greek warfare and ideology. Again, that moment that many historians really start the clock on Western civilization. Lecture 34, Persian Art and Culture, explores the synthesis of Mesopotamian and Iranian artistic styles in Persian imperial art and architecture. Lecture 35 looks at Alexander the Great. You can't talk much about Mesopotamia without touching upon Alexander the Great, and it follows Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire and the seismic cultural shifts that followed. And then lecture 36, the final lecture, is titled After Alexander. It concludes the whole series with the Seleucid and Parthian periods, showing how Mesopotamia remained a crossroads of empires as well as religion and innovation long after its classical age. Those are the 36 lectures. Each and every one of them is certainly fascinating. I enjoyed probably all of them, although some maybe stuck out a little more to me than others. But across 36 lectures, there are certainly going to be certain arguments that are being made. I may not have caught all of them, but these are just a few of the key argumentative distinctions that stood out to me as I was listening to these. So here are those key interpretive stances and thematic through lines that the presenter builds throughout the course. First of all, Mesopotamia is the first urban civilization. Castor frames Mesopotamia not as a peripheral prelude to Greece and Rome, but as the birthplace of urban life, with cities, bureaucracies, literature, and law arising thousands of years earlier than any of those civilizations. She also argues that material culture and daily life matter as much as kings and battles. Rather than focusing solely on monumental achievements, Castor emphasizes how objects like homes and meals and family structures tell us just as much, if not more, about how ancient Mesopotamians lived and understood the world around them. She also argues that divine kingship was invented here and then it was exported. The ideology of rulers as semi-divine or divinely chosen, often associated with later empires, began in Mesopotamia and became a model for power across the ancient world. As we saw empire after empire taking place in Mesopotamia, we see certain ideas becoming more and more influential, and this is of course one of them, and then it expands well beyond Mesopotamia. She also argues that the ancient past is constructed, not just discovered. This is a very important argument as we consider any past, but especially a past like this where our resources are limited. The professor Castor frequently highlights how archaeology and modern interpretation shape what we know about Mesopotamia. Let me put "know" in quotes. And she reminds us that history is filtered through evidence and excavation practices and scholarly priorities, which can change. She also argues that empires are built on administration, not just conquest. The success of the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Persians wasn't just military. They mastered record keeping and tribute systems and infrastructure and messaging long before the Romans did, and that is what made empires possible. Now, I found so many interesting things as I was listening to this series, but here are just a few of the fun facts that stuck out to me. You may already know some of them. They were just interesting things that I came across. For example, the Epic of Gilgamesh predates Homer by about 1,000 years. It also contains a flood narrative strikingly similar to that of Noah in the Hebrew Bible. Also, cuneiform was originally developed to track beer, bread, and livestock. It was not to write down myths or literature. Some of you may find that anticlimactic when you think about the value of writing. Queen Puabi of Ur was buried with attendants, oxen, gold headdresses, and a lyre. A glimpse into a royal death rituals that rivals those of the Egyptians, most famously the pharaohs. Hammurabi's code includes laws from everything from medical malpractice to false accusations and to broken infrastructure. The eye for an eye principle was only part of it. We see a lot more if you read it all the way through. Mesopotamians brewed at least 19 types of beer. Some of them were so thick they could only be consumed with straws. Ziggurats were not temples you entered, they were the platforms meant to elevate the temple itself and bring it closer to the gods, and humans generally stayed below them. The Mari letters, which are thousands of clay tablets from a single archive, let us eavesdrop on political schemes, family squabbles, and royal gossip from nearly 4,000 years ago. This is an amazing trove of information. Assyrian kings depicted themselves killing lions in ceremonial hunts, not just to show bravery, but as a symbol of divine favor and cosmological order. The Persians respected local customs and deities, often allowing conquered peoples to retain their religious traditions, part of what made their empire so durable. The Seleucid dynasty ruled Mesopotamia with Greek-style cities, but local traditions like astrology and temple economy persisted long after Alexander. Those are just a few of the really interesting things I found as I went through these various lectures. As always, I generally liked this series. It's well structured, informative, and I thought Dr. Castor did a great job as the presenter. Her background as a social historian really shines through, especially in the way she highlights the everyday objects and overlooked aspects of ancient life. Her insights into jewelry, adornment, and material culture helped ground the course in the lived experience of ordinary people. I found it engaging from beginning to end. While it is a long course, that's more a reflection on its ambition than any kind of flaw. Mesopotamian history spans millennia with countless city-states and empires and so many rulers and religious changes and social developments to consider that you're going to get a long series out of it. And I think that Castor navigates all that without losing sight of the broader narrative of the human beings at the heart of it, especially since she puts so much emphasis on those human beings. There's real attention to the variety of experiences, from the kings and queens to the merchants and slaves and scribes. And I appreciated that she didn't just reduce Mesopotamia to its myths and its monuments. I did enjoy all of that very much so. So who is this course for? Well, this course is a great fit for anyone interested in ancient history beyond the usual Greece and Rome canon. If you've ever wanted to understand where writing, cities, and empires really began, this is essential viewing. It's especially well suited for students and educators and lifelong learners like myself, who may also be creating some educational content, who want to explore the roots of civilization through a mix of political history, archaeology, literature, and everyday life. If you're curious about how ordinary people lived, or if you enjoy courses that include both the big picture and the granular detail, you'll likely find this course course both enlightening and rewarding. Fans of the Great Courses series looking for a thoughtful, academic, but still accessible presentation will really enjoy this one. So who is this not for? Well, this may not be the right course for viewers looking for flashy visuals or a fast-paced overview. Of course, that is something true of almost all of the Great Courses series. And I would say that while the content is rich, it's delivered in a measured lecture style format, which not everyone is going to love, with a tone that leans academic rather than performative. So if you can't handle one person talking all this time, then you may not enjoy them. Or if you're hoping for constant drama or storytelling or flourishes, this just isn't going to be the thing that appeals to you. But then again, I think you should already know that by this point if you've watched this much of this video. And I think that by this point, you should have a pretty good idea if you would be interested in something like this. And again, if you've watched this video this far, you probably are. At least that would be my guess. I would say that Between the Rivers is a rich and thoughtful journey through humanity's oldest and most foundational civilizations. Dr. Castor does an excellent job bringing to life not just the kings and conquerors, but all of the other people that made up those civilizations. And I would say that, again, the way that she shows the shaping of Mesopotamian culture over thousands of years is absolutely fascinating. It's a course that rewards your time and attention, and it offers a layered understanding of how urban life and written language and centralized power first came into being. If you've watched or listened to this course or have thoughts about Mesopotamia or ancient empires or any of the other things that I have touched upon, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking. And if any of this is interesting to you, please go check out either my playlist for the Great Courses or any of my other videos related to this content, or above all, go check out my other channel, History Unraveled with Dr. Duncan. And if you are enjoying this video or any of my videos, please share them. The more people that know about my videos, the more videos I can make. And don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.